Best damn band in the land, best video podcast in the land. Doesn't have quite the same ring. We'll probably hold off on that one. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We can only bring you Ohio State football live coverage for 1 hour each and every week because of these three gentlemen to my left or right, depending on your screen perspective. It's Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts 247 Sports, Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone, and Kevin Noon from Rivals Buckeye Grove. How you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Doing great.
Excellent. So talking Ohio State football, want to let everyone know that you've got to subscribe to the channel to get the notifications. You turn on the bell, then you know when we're going live. We've got 4 schedules to deal with, so sometimes we've got to move the live stream along. Also, jump in the live chat. Of course, bring us your comments, your questions, and your debate topics, and we will mix it up. Steve, in regards to you three gentlemen, you'll be hopping off a little bit early today to get yourselves set to hear from Athletic Director Gene Smith. And as we were discussing and Kevin was outlining before we started to record, the steps are being rolled out kind of methodically, which makes a whole lot of sense. I don't think anybody can say this is the master plan from start to finish through the college football championship game. It's going to have to be in stages. It's going to have to be, well, we've determined this. This seems to be safe and logical. Bam. Then we'll go from there and let you know after that. But the first week of June is pretty strategic at this point.
Yeah, seems like they're trying to get the athletes thinking in terms of getting back on campus and giving everybody a heads up. And there's a lot of logistics certainly that will be involved in this. There won't be any dorms, it wouldn't seem, available. So they'll have to find lodging and everything. And we're being told that right now it's voluntary in terms of people being expected to be back, but the doors to the facilities will be open, it seems. And listening to Mickey Marotti talk last week, he was talking about how they may have to do things in 10-person units just to comply with safety regulations and different things like that at this point. So I guess we're going to a new setup, a new normal, I guess, until we get back to what we all believe is normal. And hopefully that day will come soon enough. But again, they're taking baby steps toward getting back on campus and trying to put a team together, some semblance of a team together for what everyone hopes is the football season in 2020.
So, Kevin, right now, in regards to baby steps, as Steve says, those dates would be at least the known dates or the projected known dates on conversation would be right now.
Right. They're doing a Division I council meeting today, is my understanding, where this would be addressed. And I think once the NC2A signs off on that level, then it becomes more on the conference level and then the member school level. The SEC is having a meeting on the 22nd, and that was always going to be a conversation about reopening in June. So in theory, the SEC could probably be ready to go June 1 once we get past this May 31st end of, we can't have any team activities of any way, shape, or form. The Big Ten is having its presidents and chancellors meeting on June 7th. And that's why June 8th is the date that is really circled for Ohio State, because it would be the next opportunity coming off of this June 7th call that was already on the books, year in and year out. And obviously that's where the Big Ten is going to discuss about opening up its facilities on this voluntary basis, as Steve put it.
Yeah, I saw Clemson will start letting their staff into the buildings on June 1st, I believe. Ohio State has already started that this past week. It's some, like coaches are only allowed to be in there like for 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, and only a certain number of coaches per in the building at a time. And as Steve was saying, now that's going to apply to players. It's going to be interesting just to see the incremental how, like, the receivers go in from 6 to 9, and then the offensive line from 9 to 12, and you'll have all of these different breakdowns or freshmen. I joked with somebody like freshmen are going to be it's going to be like a factory, and the freshmen are going to get the third shift. Like treat the lowest guys on the totem pole and give them the worst hours to go and work out. They'll have to be in there from 2 a.m. till 9 a.m. or something like that. But the good thing about all of this is Ohio State is so regimented in everything they do that this is just more of it. And players are already used to being told what to do, where to be, how to get there. And now there's just going to be more of it. And we talked to Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis last week or whenever it was, and those guys are dying to get back. And I'm sure they're not the only ones. Players want to get back. Almost, it doesn't matter what you, however it has to be done, they want to get back working. They want to get back seeing everybody. Mickey Marotti told us that guys are showing up on Zoom meetings early just to hang out with each other. So everybody's missing each other. Absence has made the heart grow fonder, but the groups are going to be smaller for sure.
I miss you guys. I miss all of you.
I miss you, man.
Oh, yeah. Ohio State football talk each and every week, and everybody's looking extra sharp today. Got their haircuts in place. Steve had the helmet head, as he said. I didn't say it last week, and, of course, Kevin had to blow us off because he had more important things to take care of.
Well, let's not forget Steve did leave early.
And Steve left early.
But it was worth it. Look at that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice, tight, looking good, everybody. Looking good. You guys fired up a little bit of ire in the comments section in a few different spots regarding the linebacking situation because of, again, the thought out there that the guys that are in the backup roles right now, the more seemingly athletic players aren't starting, and basically because Werner and Borland, those two being picked out in particular, because they got there first and nailed down those starting spots. They're the incumbents, and that's all the coaching staff is looking at, and they're not replacing those. I don't necessarily know that would be backed up by the decisions that have been made for playing time in other positions on the field, offense and defense, Tony.
Yeah, the lack of athleticism among the starters, I would argue that there's a singular reason why somebody might think Pete Werner is not athletic enough to do what he's doing. And this is a guy who plays outside linebacker, plays the Sam, has defended slots, had to rotate deep safety, did well doing that last year. That's not something you ask linebackers to do. And he's 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds. So I don't want to hear that he's not athletic, because he is. And I'll probably lead the team in tackles this year if they move him to Will, like they're talking about in the spring. I mean, this is a guy that everybody on the team swears by. Coaches, players, everybody loves him. Did he have some issues in 2018? Yeah, he was asked to defend J.D. Spielman out wide. I'm like, that's Ohio State cornerbacks weren't doing that very well in 2018. So, I'm not here for any Pete Werner slander. You can say what you want about Tough Borland. He's a captain. He starts every year. Different coaches start him. No, he's not the fastest guy. You don't need to be as a middle linebacker. Baron Browning's supposed to be really fast. I saw Trevor Lawrence pull away from him last year in a Clemson game. So, yeah, Kayvon Pope is great. I love watching him. He's had a couple of interceptions last year. We all want to see what Taraji Mitchell can do. They have an opportunity. They've gotten to play. There's a competition every year to be the starter, and it's Tough Borland, Pete Werner have won jobs with multiple linebacker coaches. So I'm not here for any Pete Werner slander.
We all love what's behind curtain number 2. That's why the Let's Make a Deal was so popular back in the 70s, and then they brought it back with I think Wayne Brady doing it. I mean, everybody wants to see the guy that's not out there at this point. And what happens if they slide Baron Browning to more of a rush-in type of stand-up guy? I mean, you still have Justin Hilliard coming back for his 63rd year in the program. I mean, Justin Hilliard, he made some big plays down the stretch for the team. So, you can't forget about him. But, I think year 2 under Al Washington, I think we will see an opportunity for some of these, it's hard to use the term young guys because they've been in the program for a couple of years, but I think we'll see more of a rotation. But at the end of the day, you want to have your best 11 out there. And if they deem that the best 11 is with Messrs. Werner, Borland, and whether it's Hilliard or Browning or whatnot, then that's they're going to trot out there.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt about it. And I think the good news is they're too deep at every position with a quality player. And I think that listening to Al Washington talk, he is committed to playing both guys at each spot. And, whether it's a 60-40 basis or 80-20 or whatever it may be, but they're all going to get an opportunity to play. And I think that's what people need to focus on and kind of look toward the fall with some excitement to know there'll be some fresh blood out there running around at times. Some guys, like Pope and Mitchell and Kent that haven't been given those opportunities in the past, and they're going to get every chance to play as many snaps as they're able to play. So I think that's going to be an exciting development this fall. And the seniors that are coming back, great leaders. And Ohio State's had a very good defense here the last year or two, I suppose. And I think those guys have been part of it. And I think, we're looking forward to what should be, again, a team that contends for a championship. I don't think one position is going to sink or swim this team. I think it's, if they have a bunch of guys who are new starters that come in and can't compete, can't play at that level, then they'll have a problem. But I don't foresee that being an issue.
One other thing on like Taraja Mitchell, everybody wants to see him. And I've had people tell me like he should be the middle linebacker. And I have to remind them, like, he's not even playing middle linebacker. Dallas Gant is at middle linebacker, and Mitchell is at the will. So it's like he's not even involved in a position, and you have some people who think he's clearly the best one. The staff doesn't even want him at middle linebacker right now because he's not there. So I sometimes get a little amped up when the linebacker talk comes on. But as Steve said, there's 7 guys there who are juniors or seniors, and they're all going to play. Just, how we don't complain about the defensive line, like Zach Harrison should be starting, Tyreek Smith should be starting. They all play. They're all starters. Nick Bosa had 10 career starts, but he was always in there.
As Kevin alluded to, I think there's also a thought process generally among a fan base that if the position's not quite up to what the standard is supposed to be, it's always that the quote-unquote backup quarterback is always the most popular guy on the roster. That's why recruiting there's so much enamored toward recruiting. Those guys must be better than the guys we have. Let's get them in. We're excited about them. Let's get them in because they have to be better than we just went 13-1. Those guys have to be better. Let's get them in. And I also just think from a perspective, depending on your age, you have to adjust to today's football and what the expectations are for defensive play and offensive play, meaning that the quarterback who goes 15-10 TD to pick ratio with 58% completion percentage, college football quarterback 10 or 15 years ago, it's a pretty good season. Now, unless he's not getting the support elsewhere, he needs to hit the bench because, man, you got to complete 65, 68% of your passes, and that holds true for the defensive side. The days of holding good teams down to 10 and 13 points a game and 150 or 80 yards of total offense just ain't happening. These kids come into campus, and the pitch and catch proficiency is just out of the off the radar in regards to just their ability to do that and play offensive football and run more plays. So they're going to gain more yardage and score more points. And the expectations of a defense and what they're able to do against a decent offense needs to be tempered to a certain extent. All right. We got Ryan D on the line asking about the playoff situation with a smaller schedule. If I could jump in on this one real quick, I just think that the College Football Playoff Committee has a difficult I am often critical, but I have state right off the top each and every year they have a very difficult, basically impossible assignment in going with 5 conferences and then other worthy teams into 4 spots. Now they're going to have less data to go on depending on what non-conference games could be eliminated. We don't have enough cross-play between the 5 conferences anyway to make as valid determination or evaluation of these teams, and we're going to have less. So they're just going to have less data to work on to make a reasonable decision.
Yeah, we don't know what the season's going to look like as of right now. We're assuming it's still going to be 12 games for everybody, but it's possible it could be 9, it could be 10, it could be conference only, it could be conference plus 1 non-conference. If you had a marquee game and then your Bowling Green and your Buffalo just get sloughed off to the side somehow, some way, if they start late, I don't know. But it's going to be a jigsaw puzzle. Could be a case where you book matchups on the fly just because you both have an open weekend. You just don't know. We just do not know until we get into it. But my feeling is, as of today, it's going to be played as scheduled, 12 games. And so I don't look at it as that big of an issue. And as you said, Mark, however it turns out, if one team plays 11 games and one team somehow only plays 9, that's just the way that it worked out this year. And I think people are just going to have to accept that this is an uncommon situation. This is not how anybody would design it. And we're all prisoners of inertia at this point, that however it works out, however it works out. And whether a team played 9 games or if they played 11, just give me the best 4 at the end of the year. I don't care how you do it. If the number 1 team only played 9 games and won them all by 20 points, they're the best team. I mean, I don't know what the big argument would be. And I think everybody's going to have to put those format questions aside. And this will be more of an eyeball test type year as opposed to an apples to oranges comparison type year, I think, because there's going to be inequity. I was working on a project yesterday, and I was looking back at 1997, and Michigan won the AP National Championship that year. They played 7 ranked teams in the course of the year. 4 of them were in the top 10, including Ohio State, who they played at the end of the year, and then Washington State in the Rose Bowl, and they were given the AP championship. This was the last year before they went to the BCS the following year. Well, Nebraska, everybody thought, Nebraska, should have been the top team. Well, they only played 4 ranked teams, and only 2 of them were in the top 10. And so, as you look at it on a comparison, anybody who Michigan may not have been dominant on the field, but they certainly played and beat better competition than Nebraska did. Just praise that as an example of that was cut and dried, 7 ranked teams to 4. And the coaches still gave their championship to their buddy, Tom Osborne, and, Michigan got the AP championship. And we did have 1 split championship in the BCS era. I think USC won half one year and LSU won the other half. And so it's all apples to oranges. And I guess that's just what I'm trying to come around to, is that it's not going to be a perfect scenario this year. And I think everyone can put out of their mind that it's going to be cut and dried, that 1, 2, 3, 4 are going to suddenly appear to us that, that's obvious. No, there's going to have to be some gray area and some discussion. And, the committee's going to do what they can do. That's all, all they can ever do.
That 97 Nebraska team also had a perfectly placed cleat in the end zone against Missouri that kicked a football up in the air that caught the other Nebraska player right in the hands. He held on to it, and they had a miraculous win against a pretty marginal Missouri team. Steve, you're stealing my thunder. I'm marching through controversial national championship decisions right now. I'm ready to roll out 1983, 84, and 90.
There you go.
You other two have any thoughts about what the playoff schedule could look like?
Well, one thing I think that we know is going to be the case is that we're not going to see a season that slid back. Notre Dame has come out and moved up its academic term a couple of weeks, wants to go to winter break at Thanksgiving. So I know a lot of time people were talking about, well, maybe they slide it back a couple of weeks. We don't start the season until October. I don't see that being likely just based on the actions of some of these schools. I've been kind of perusing Twitter as we've been doing the show, and it seems like some of the Western schools, Cal, UCLA, might have open campuses, which bodes well for maybe where the Pac-12 is going to be in terms of what the Power 5 situation is going to look like. I agree with Steve that we're going to have to accept a certain level of chaos in this formula, but I don't think personally, I don't think we're going to see a case where there's going to be a huge disparity in terms of how many games these teams play. I mean, obviously, if we get to a point of where a lot of games are impacted, we've got larger issues to worry about at that point. But I don't think we're going to see a huge variance in that purpose. But I do think that it's going to probably be one of the tougher calls that the college football playoff committee is going to have to go through, because what happens if there are a couple schools that just are not able to go, and because of that, it creates ripples down the schedule, and you're not able to make these moves to fill in these types of games. So, I think they're still going to try and keep it as business as usual as possible. But with that being said, you have to be prepared for the unexpected, because even under the best case scenario, we've seen a lot of stuff go down through the years, and now we're dealing with outside forces that we've never had to deal with before.
And right now, things seem to be progressing well to where the season would begin on time. But if you're thinking, like, if it doesn't, and there are only 9 games played, I think that negatively impacts the Big Ten more than, say, the SEC, where the SEC has non-conference games on the back end of their schedule quite a bit. And Ohio State would lose the Oregon game. And, I'm looking at Clemson's schedule. They have Notre Dame and South Carolina in the second half of their schedule, or past, where the games would be skipped. So, like, if it would come down to Ohio State and Clemson and both are equal, and for some reason there's 3 other teams ahead of those two, and you look at their schedules, Clemson having Notre Dame and maybe South Carolina, assuming they'd be good, they've got some non-conference wins that Ohio State wouldn't. And it's not like a conference win does anything for Clemson, because we know the ACC is terrible. But it would bring some interesting situations if the season is the non-conference portion, the first 3 games or whatever, didn't happen. And that would, because that's where a lot of the premier games are, and at least for, when the Big Ten likes to do stuff. And but I think right now, we're all feeling a lot better than we have in the past. But we'll see what Gene Smith has to say. We'll see what the Division I Council has to say this, coming up. And it's an interesting discussion, but we still need to know more, obviously.
Folks, let's understand out of the gate that this is not the NFL playoffs in regards to an objective system that you go step 1, step 2, step 3 to determine a playoff. And then all of a sudden, if you had some team playing 16 games and another team 11 games, and we're talking about a process that's subjective anyway. So it's just going to be subjective again, just with different criteria based on a little bit more unevenness, possibly, to the schedule.
Just make it 8 teams, and then everybody's a little bit happier.
I would be if it was done the right way. But anyway, that's another conversation. So Todd is asking about recruiting and opening up recruiting. So has there been any talk about that? Of course, we've just kind of passed the season, or would be right in the midst of one of the main times in regards to bringing kids on campus, and that's pretty much going to leave us by.
Well, we've already said that we're in a dead period through June. There won't be June officials. They can open up athletic facilities and whatnot, but they're not going to backtrack, in my opinion, on the recruiting calendar. I think we're going to be in a dead period probably until August, to be quite honest, because there's something to be said about bringing on your signed, scholarship student athletes versus bringing on uncommitted high school students and their families for visits and whatnot. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, but it just seems like there's a lot more, you run a lot more liability risk at that point. I think they need to sort through some things before they get they get there. I think that they need to make sure that everybody is open to about the same level of openness. So I don't see any change happening, and I would say June is still going to be closed.
Yeah, I would think closer to July 1st before they do that. I think they want to get a little deeper into the process here of the reopening of our society and find out, what truly is safe. They wouldn't be mandating that kids visit. I mean, it's still voluntary for any kid who wants to visit. And I think the other part of it is getting out on the road and meeting with people. That whole period in May where that usually happens and coaches go out and watch spring practice has all been put by the wayside. So I think that, you're looking primarily that that you're trying to get people onto your campus. And so I guess we'll have to wait and see when, that is deemed safe. And, Ohio State, they would be busy almost around the clock right now, just showing prospective freshmen who are going to be seniors this coming year or who haven't made their decision yet, or even underclassmen, juniors, whatever, just students at large come through there every day for visits, and they're not doing that. So until such time that the university says it's okay to bring prospective students at large, just boys, girls, whoever, not football people. Thousands of those people tour the campus every year, and probably 100 or more of them per day when it's nice. Until it's been cleared that those people can come back on campus, why would you think it's safe to do athletic visits? So I know it's important, and it's an important part of the competitive process of recruiting, but I think that's going to be a decision that's made on a per university basis. The NCAA may lift its moratorium and say, if it's deemed safe by your local university, you can do this, but otherwise, until that time, it's still a closed shop.
Let me jump in real quick before Gerd or anybody. I'm going to say that the NC2A is all about fairness, and granted, I don't think it's going to be a case of where they're going to try and shove parity down people's throats, but I don't see them personally making a move where maybe more gung-ho cavalier programs are able to have some sort of advantage on that. I think that it's going to be very important for them to toe a certain line, and I can't see them putting it in a position of where it becomes Wild West, and it's like, if you feel good enough about it, then go for it. I think that they could still say, all right, July 1, let's just use that as a date. July 1, we're going for it. And if you're not cool with it, then that's on you or whatever. I think that that's much more likely than just saying, all right, well, we're far enough along at this point. We're just going to lift it and, vaya con Dios, let's go for it or whatever. I think it's going to have to be a more calculated situation, just in knowing how the NC2A works, and just already this wild belief of how the recruiting fortunes are so stacked against so many members of the 130 Division 1A teams.
Yeah, you have college coaches who are still mad that some programs got more spring practices than they did. And now if some of those schools get visits before they can, they would never allow it, or they would do everything they can to make sure that the NCAA would step in. I still go back to when the NCAA had a limit on media guide pages, and because it was an unfair advantage for some schools, for Texas to have 250-page, media guide and have this glossy cover. So somehow now a kid was going to choose Texas over East Carolina because of this media guide. So they've relaxed some rules. I don't know if they're ready to relax them like this, though.
We talk Ohio State football each and every week with these three gentlemen. You've got just to the side of me, Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts 247 Sports. So gracious to post the videos each and every week. Kevin Noon below me. You can catch him on Buckeye Grove. And Tony Gerdeman, there he is from theozone.net. All three have joined me for a long, long time talking Ohio State football. And now we're at a year going each week with this actually show number 53, but we were so hard at work and analysis, we didn't even recognize one full year last week.
Too busy
Ballard,
grinding.
grinding. Yeah, when you grind, you just let the you don't look at that sort of stuff. Absolutely. Ballard here asking about the weakest position for Ohio State in 2019. What the program's done to address that. I also think that to finish up our linebacker conversation, that once there's a microscope on a player, a unit, something, then everybody gravitates to it and people see things that aren't necessarily there as well, especially people that may not know as much about football and what they are actually looking for. But Tony, we'll let you address the position of that needs to be addressed. There's a lot to work with there. The team just was
when you talk about
disarray
weakest
last year.
The weakest position, I had somebody on Twitter. I was getting into an argument with the person on the internet, as I want to do, about the linebackers, and he's like, "Are you telling me that they weren't the weakest link on the defense last year?" I'm like, you can be the weakest link on the number one total defense in the nation, which the Ohio State Buckeyes were last year, and still be pretty darn good. So I've been trying to figure out this question, like what was the weakest position last year? And I'm wondering if it was wide receivers, with Austin Mack and Benjamin Victor, maybe not as productive as you would like, but you still have Chris Olave and KJ Hill and Garrett Wilson. Because I don't think it was linebackers, and it certainly wasn't the secondary. It wasn't the defensive line. The offensive line was great. Can't say anything bad about J.K. Dobbins. Justin Fields had the second greatest season in Ohio State football history. So tight ends were fine. They played more than the second H-back. So maybe it was, for me, I would say the receivers. And so how do you replace them? You bring in four, top 100 kids, a couple of 5-stars. You move Garrett Wilson to the slot to take over for KJ Hill, and I would expect him to have much better. I see Kevin mentioned in the text here that the return game. I always forget about it. I don't. The special teams. I think the return game has kind of been negated by the kickoffs. But Kevin, don't sidetrack me just yet. Let me just finish, and then you can go with the return game.
Kevin wants to produce this thing.
No, I missed you guys so much last week that I'm full of energy.
True. But you move Garrett Wilson into the slot. I think he's going to be huge. Chris Olave, Jamison Williams will be fine at the Z. And, what do you do at the X? I think that's the biggest question, replacing Benjamin Victor. But I don't think it's that hard. It will be that hard to replace Benjamin Victor. There's a lot of young guys at the receiver, so they're going to be tested. But for me, there might be different answers all around on the weakest position group, but I would go staying away from special teams. I would go with the receivers, and I think they'll be just fine this year.
I guess I'll have to jump in with return game. I'll do it quick. I cut Steve off there. I really hate playing the who's the weakest, etc. Because again, you deal with a team that was a play away from playing for the national championship. We're really splitting some hairs, and Tony hit the nail on the head by saying that a lot of the rules have changed to negate certain aspects of the return game. But if we're really trying to do a deep dive and find somewhere that maybe Ohio State isn't among national leaders in a certain area, I think it would be the return game, just because, all right, with the kickoffs, you have a lot of fair catches or whatnot, but maybe in the punt returns, it's been a while since, everybody would hold their breath with great anticipation and nerves when Jalen Marshall was back there. But since Jalen Marshall, when was the last guy that you saw returning punts on the regular that you thought that had the ability really at any given time to house something? So, I don't necessarily know if somebody like a Jamison Williams is, it takes a rare breed to be a punt returner, because it's a very different setup than a kick returner or whatnot. Maybe there is somebody on the roster that they can plug into that position, but you're also not going to put a frontline guy that you're counting on that much into the cannon and telling him to wear the helmet and then firing him out of the cannon. So, I don't know, but I guess I would go return game.
Yeah, I would agree with what I've heard from both of you that there was room for improvement. I think would be the best way to put it. Both the return game, and that's been several years, as Kevin mentioned. Wide receiver play, yeah, I think Victor was inconsistent. I think Mac was banged up at times, and perhaps that held them back from being completely five strong there, because you did have Hill and you had Wilson and you had Olave certainly, who were all big play type guys. So I don't know. I don't worry. Haven't worried too much about that. Um, it is kind of a difficult argument when you have a team that was 13-1 and the first team in Big Ten history to beat 10 Big Ten opponents in a season, and did it by an average margin of like 30-some points per game. I don't know that there's a lot of weaknesses on a team like that, and it took an act of God almost for them to lose a game, and that's kind of what happened. Every bounce and every call went against them, and they lost the game. So I'm not certain that there was a weakness on that team. Football's a game of funny bounces and funny calls sometimes, and they didn't get to play for the national championship. I think more so because of that than because of any perceived weakness with any one group of the team. I mean, they were a dominant team for the first 12 games certainly, and then the second half of the 13th game, and the first half of the 14th game. So I don't know. They played pretty good. Well, pretty good last season. I don't know where there's a lot of room for improvement, but I'm sure that's what Coach Ryan Day and the rest of them are getting paid to get they can out of those guys.
So Ohio State football talk each and every week with Tony Gerdeman, Steve Hellwagon, and Kevin Noon. You can catch Kevin on Buckeye Grove, Tony on theozone.net. Steve Hellwagon joins us from Bucknuts on 247 Sports. People concerned about Tony Grimes' decision, number one cornerback in the country, number one player out of Virginia, top 10 player in the nation, regardless of position, and also comments in the live chat, gentlemen, about Travion Henderson and Oklahoma writers saying that he's going to flip to OU. Do you have any thoughts about either one of those dramas?
Tony Grimes is going to go to UGA. Travion Henderson's not going to flip. Next.
Yeah, I think even Henderson himself was playing with people on Twitter yesterday about that. And I saw Kevin in particular, I think, post a reply, "Ain't recruiting grand." The neat thing about this is it's May 20th, and these guys can't sign until on or about December the 20th, give or take a day or two. So they've only got 7 more months of this crap to deal with. He's going here. Oh, he took a visit there. Whatever. There's going to be some of that happens. And even Urban Meyer would always say, as I'm going back over these old recruiting classes, I want to say it was Jamarco Jones who made a late visit to Michigan State, perhaps, and then picked Ohio State on signing day or the day before. And he'd been committed, and I think I have the right name. And Urban Meyer said, look, he said he was just going to make sure. And he said that I want guys that are sure and have exhausted all of the visits or gotten all the information they need to get, basically the gist of what he had to say. So I think we have to give these kids a little bit of leeway. I know it was noted that there's been over 700 commitments so far, whereas at this time last year was in the 300 or 400 range. And so, as one of the great experts nationally has said, get ready for the greatest decommitment season in the history of college football. Once everyone's been freed from their cabin and can go out and explore this great new world of ours out there and see what all's out there and see campuses they've never been to and meet assistant coaches and head coaches they've never met before. And, get up and close and personal and find out what really is out there for them. Although I don't see a lot of guys decommitting from Ohio State as the market leader right now in the sport. So, I just think it is going to be a volatile.
And if there aren't a bunch of decommits, expect the transfer portal to be even busier over the next couple of years as well.
I was going to say that this really is something that was talked about with South Florida guys, but I think it's getting wider now. When a kid commits somewhere at this point, the saying is, well, now we know who leads. And I'll even say when it comes to some South Florida kids and maybe other ones now, as it broadens, you almost don't want to be the school at this point, because it's tough to hold on to a kid's commitment for 10, 11, 12 months or whatnot. And while we do see a couple kids who will decommit and then end up at the school that they initially committed to, that's not the trend. And, so does any of that really apply directly to Ohio State's top-ranked recruiting class on both of the major services? No, I don't believe so. As Steve said, as the market leader, Ohio State is in, kids aren't going to jump out of those spots more than likely. But, we could be in for some bumpy times just in terms as an industry, watching a lot of kids who could be, top 100, top 250 type kids who could be all about, various other places once this stuff opens up.
That's good business, though. Like for the sites and the networks, decommitment season, that'd be great too, right?
Yep. Just not with Ohio State, We have to put out enough fires with all that.
It would also be good business for college football like the NFL to have a schedule release each off season. That's what I'm proposing. Not everybody running around making their own schedules 12 years in advance. You have a schedule release and you put it in the hands of a committee that has a lockdown on metrics and what would be a fair schedule. Matthew Braz picking on my 1997 Missouri comment about them being marginal. I thought I used the terms marginal to decent. 7-5, lost to a 5-win Kansas team, lost by 30 points to Kansas State. Yeah, 7-5. I'm going to stay with marginal to decent, Matthew. I'm going to stand by that. All right, talking Ohio State football, you got to subscribe to get the notifications to know when we are on. Tony Gerdeman, Steve Hellwagon, and Kevin Noon. I don't know whether to dive into this. We'll leave this one for later. You guys won't have to do any homework on this. Well, you don't have to do any homework on anything. But the more I comb through the comments on, we'll tease everyone for a future topic that's more of a legacy overarching topic on JT Barrett. I don't think that there's ever going to be another player that's going to be as polarizing as JT Barrett, and he continues to be. He's got his huge fans and his detractors on the other end, and we'll just have to dive into his legacy at another time. But the comments are all over the place regarding JT Barrett on the videos that have already been posted.
Yeah, you can ask us to start commenting on that as it's time to go.
Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not dive into that one. It'll be a great conversation. Dennis, I got to credit Dennis because I jump on Dennis all the time. He's a Miami fan, but he's faithfully here all the time and commenting and shares the videos and does all sorts of good stuff for the channel, commenting that the Big Ten is terrible outside of the Buckeyes, my man. Dennis, please, ACC, Big Ten, I try to cut it as straight as I possibly can. Yes, truth be known, Ohio State fan, grew up in Big Ten country, but we run the metrics here. I try to be as fair as possible. I go back to 2016. I opted for Penn State in the playoff. I try to just cut it and see it like it is. And by any metric, there is no Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan, Iowa level in the ACC right now. It drops down to like the 25th or 30th best team in the country. So there's just no comparison right now. Play another football season, and we'll talk after 2020. All right. Anything else you guys have on your minds with about 3 minutes left?
Nope. We're looking forward to getting on this conference call here in a couple minutes and hearing what Gene Smith has to say. And, hopefully by the time we reconvene next week at whatever day that'll be with all of our voting schedules, we'll have plenty of good news to talk about as we will reach some tangible goals.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff from these three as always. It's so much appreciated, you guys. Thanks for coming back each and every week. And I hope everyone out there appreciates the knowledge, the information, the insight, just a wealth of experience right here that we bring to the table each and every week, and can only do this because we've got Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts, Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone, and Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove. Guys, have a great conference call. I'm off to a different one myself, and we will see you soon.
Sounds good.
Sounds
All
good.
right, take
See ya.
care. All righty.
And I will hang on here for just a second, see if there's anything else in the live chat. Todd, of course, reminding everyone to share and subscribe. And we will see everyone next week.
All right. See you guys. Have a good one.
See ya.